Squad 44's latest update adds a 1-to-1 scale recreation of Iwo Jima, which is honestly stunning, especially for anyone who wants to recreate a combat experience with as much authenticity as possible. But it's not the only game to recreate this iconic battle. Today we're going to take a look at Squad 44's version of Iwo Jima and compare it to Battlefield 5's much more video gamey approach. Let's check it out. So, Squad 44 has been chugging along ever since it was bought by Off-World Interactive. They've released several solid updates for the game that rebalanced it, polished some things up, and added a bunch of new content. But this 2.0 update feels kind of like a turning point for the game. Recreating Iwo Jima at a 1-to-1 scale is an impressive feat, and it feels like the developers may have finally found their niche, or at least the way of getting their title more recognized. Now, accurately scaled, authentic, real-world battles are not necessarily unheard of in the milsim space. Hell Let Loose made a name for itself by recreating battlefields with extreme levels of authenticity, but it doesn't always work to the player's benefit in that realistic battlefields often don't translate to good gameplay. But for the sake of spectacle, Iwo Jima brings something else to the table. Right off the bat, when I began storming the beaches and saw the famous mountain looming in the distance, it felt sort of like the inaccessible background set dressing that you'd see in an open world game to make the map seem bigger than it really is. But later in the match, I found myself scaling the side of the mountain while taking fire from the other team. I looked back down at the beach I had stormed and realized it would take me like half an hour to actually run back down there to where we began. It was just kind of mind-blowing to realize how big the map actually is. Comparing it to the version of Iwo Jima that DICE created for Battlefield 5, it's like comparing Nuketown from Call of Duty to, say, Verdansk, but like multiplying it by 4 or something. The scale difference is just absolutely insane. And while you kind of know that most of these games are portraying these battles in a more video gamey light, you don't really realize it until you play Squad 44's version of Iwo Jima. In Battlefield 5, I can storm the beach, run to an objective, capture it, and be well on my way to the next one in the same amount of time I'd spend just getting off the beach in Squad 44. And while you could certainly argue that that's a bit tedious, I think it's a unique experience unlike anything I've played in a game before, and it's not just due to the scale. Now, unlike Battlefield 5's version of this map, which kind of attempts to balance things for both sides so that both teams can get plenty of kills and not get frustrated by getting absolutely wiped out, Squad 44's Iwo Jima is an intensely asymmetrical battle. The Japanese have every conceivable advantage you can think of, aside from maybe weapon variety. They have heavily fortified bases that they can spawn at, surrounded by wide open fields of death. They also have an insanely massive tunnel and trench network that runs through huge sections of the map, and they have key advantages owning all of the starting objectives. The US side is honestly lucky if it even gets off the beach, let alone captures the more brutal objectives like the airfield. And comparing things like the tunnel network in Battlefield 5 to Squad 44's version is like apples and oranges. They don't compare. DICE's representation of the tunnels is brightly lit indoor areas with some short lengths of tunnel connecting them. Certainly fun to play in and they look great, but maybe not for historical reference. Squad 44's is like a labyrinth of dark underground holes barely big enough to fit a person that seemingly stretch on for miles in every direction. And it really does make the experience feel extremely authentic, even if burrowing through a tunnel for miles isn't your favorite thing. Now, in the real-world battle, the US casualties were 3-to-1 compared to what the Japanese suffered. But when you play the experience in something like Battlefield 5, a game that's supposed to be more balanced, even though it's supposed to kind of have like an asymmetrical look to it, it's just hard to replicate the design of the battle to any degree of accuracy because you're trying to make it fun for your player base no matter where they end up on the battlefield. In Squad 44, the odds are against you when you play for the US, at least your survival odds, I should say. The amount of times that I got killed by an unseen Japanese soldier seriously made me start to question my eyesight. I was playing on a 90-player server, which is impressive in itself, but it honestly felt like I was facing a force of 200. everywhere I went on the map, there was some sort of enemy element. And because of the scale of the map, flanking as a concept went from running around an enemy in a small area to planning a route I know will take me tens of minutes to run just to get a potential advantage, assuming that I don't get gunned down on the way. And the few times that I actually did manage to uproot them from a key position, it felt like Rambo just clearing out an incredibly important force. Like, I remember that feeling and moment very distinctly. Whereas going on a nice kill streak or clearing an objective in Battlefield 5 is absolutely fun and I don't want to knock it, but the stakes are basically dying and having to respawn a few hundred meters away and then sprinting back into the action. The stakes in Squad 44 are, I just spent 15 minutes crawling prone through a trench network to get to this location, and if I have to die, I gotta do that all over again. Now, in just about all ways, the AAA production value of Battlefield 5 outshines Squad 44 from the visual aspect. Every objective has a distinct look to it with unique environmental design. You can immediately identify where you are on the map just by your current surroundings. And the graphics and details are stunning in every way. Honestly, BF5 is still one of the best looking games I've ever played. Putting it side by side to Squad 44, an indie title, and even this aging masterpiece is way out of Squad's league. Squad 44's approach is obviously different and not trying to compete on a eye-popping graphics level. It's a more naturalistic and authentic presentation that sacrifices a bit of variety to give you a much more real sense of scale. And because of that, in some ways, Squad 44 does look more realistic even without the advanced shaders and lighting that Battlefield 5 has. But in many other ways, it does look very copy and paste in lots of areas of the map, and because of that, it feels a bit more bland. Now, I'd say one of my biggest critiques of Squad 44 though is its polish. When you're playing a game this big with matches that last this long, any crash or major bug can absolutely destroy the experience. There's nothing quite like finally getting the sniper class and being in a prime position to spend the rest of the match picking off US forces like a fish in a barrel, only for the game to crash to desktop, costing you both your slot in the server and that coveted sniper class. Only 2 players in a section can utilize the specialist class, so the chances of getting any role aside from the standard ones is incredibly slim. Having the game crash on me after I finally got to play a role I was really looking forward to was honestly just so disappointing. Now, on a side note, I did notice that after playing Squad 44, I actually felt it really jarring seeing US soldiers run around with Japanese weapons in Battlefield 5. It actually felt pretty wrong to use the M1 Garand as a Japanese soldier. Almost as wrong as putting a magnified optic on it. But I do get the sense that Squad 44 is finally finding its lane with this 2.0 update. The faithful one-to-one recreation of an iconic battle from World War II really sets it apart in taking on just a massive project and delivering an experience that's worth playing. The commitment to authenticity, including everything from the scale and weaponry of the battle to how asymmetrical and brutal it was to fight, is represented incredibly well. I certainly can't claim that it's the most authentic feeling World War II game ever made, because I'm just not a historical expert on World War II battles, but it did make me feel like I was playing one of the most authentic experiences. Squad 44 is delivering something that is unique and it stands out from the crowd, which is hard to do in a World War II shooter, and I think it's absolutely worth checking out. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts about approaching the Battle of Iwo Jima at scale for a video game. Do you think it's awesome? Do you think it ruins the pacing? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to drop me a like, subscribe for more content like it, and up next, check out what it's like to play Battlefield in Arma. It's actually surprisingly good. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.